My heart hammered against my ribs, threatening to burst free. The bedroom door swung open, but it wasn't my new husband who entered the room. A figure cloaked in black stalked directly toward the walk-in closet where I had concealed myself. He fixed an icy stare upon me and hissed, "Choose. You can scream now and suffer a slow end from your own husband. Or remain silent and join my game to bring about his ruin." I never dreamed my wedding night would conclude this way. The irony is palpable, isn't it? At this moment, I'd love for you to comment with the city you're watching from. Please leave a like and subscribe to help the channel grow, allowing me to bring you more gripping tales. But what you cannot possibly fathom is that just beneath this warm introduction lies the torment of Amara's life. The wedding ceremony had been as magnificent as it was draining. The grand ballroom of the five-star hotel, once filled with hundreds of guests just hours ago, was dazzling. With crystal chandeliers and a murmur of joyful chatter, now lay in complete silence. Inside the bridal suite, a nearly surreal calmness descended. Amara stood before an enormous floor-to-ceiling mirror, enveloped in her ivory wedding gown with a veil of exquisite lace that cascaded down her shoulders. She drew a long breath, attempting to steady the frantic rhythm of her heart. This was it, she told herself again and again, the day she had been waiting for her entire life. She had finally become the wife of Kyrie, the man who, for the past 2 years, was her anchor after she tragically lost her parents and had to assume control of her inheritance, the Vance Legacy Group. Her fingers mindlessly traced the golden ring that now gleamed on her finger. A smile touched her lips as she recalled that very morning, when Kyrie declared "I do," his voice both steady and assured. To her, he was flawless, well-educated, considerate, devout, and industrious. He was the perfect partner with whom to share her life, and beyond that, the ideal associate to help lead the company her late father, Marcus Vance, had bequeathed to her. Amara believed she was the most fortunate black woman on earth as her eyes swept across the room. Petals from red roses were strewn across the king-sized bed, scented candles flickered in the corners, and a romantic heat filled the very air. All at once, a mischievous thought occurred to her. Kyrie was down in the lobby handling the checkout for a few relatives who were guests at the hotel. This presented the ideal moment to arrange a small surprise for him. She refused to simply wait for him on the bed like a typical bride. She longed to watch him search for her, confused and surprised. Suppressing a laugh, she lifted the weighty material of her gown and crept quietly to the large, built-in wardrobe in the corner. It was a rather spacious dressing area, large enough to conceal herself behind a row of custom suits and dresses. With care, she slid in between the garments, ducked down slightly, and drew the doors closed, leaving only a tiny crack to see through. Her heart began to pound, not from any fear, but with the thrill of envisioning Kyrie's expression when he couldn't find her. She imagined him entering the room, calling out her name with a hint of alarm, before she would leap from the closet to embrace him from behind. She held her breath, listening intently, and waited inside the darkness. Several silent minutes ticked by. At last, she heard the faint beep of the key card inserting into the lock, followed by the mechanism's click and the sound of the handle rotating. Amara smiled from her hiding spot, readying herself to spring out. She heard footsteps enter the suite. They were firm strides on the marble foyer, which were then silenced by the plush carpeting. She took a silent count to 3, preparing to jump out, but she froze solid. Through the thin gap in the closet door, she glimpsed the man who had entered. It wasn't Kyrie. This stranger was cloaked entirely in black, a leather jacket, dark jeans, and a fitted cap that concealed a part of his face. His build was sturdy and broad-shouldered, yet his stance was unlike her husband's. A shiver coursed down Amara's spine. Could he be a burglar? Someone intending to harm her? She clamped both hands over her mouth to stifle a scream, desperately hoping the man would snatch something of value from the vanity and depart without discovering her presence. But her hopes were dashed as the man bypassed the bed and the desk. He calmly shut the bedroom door, slid the deadbolt into place, and then moved with a directness toward the closet where she hid, possessing a certainty that chilled her to the bone. His gaze seemed to bore right through the wood, as if he knew precisely where she was. Amara found herself trembling uncontrollably. Tears of terror clouded her sight. As the man's hand yanked the doors, flinging them wide open, she scrambled back until she struck the closet's rear wall, poised to scream. He lifted a single finger to his lips, demanding silence. In the dim interior light, his face became clear. He had hard features, a chiseled jaw, deep mahogany skin, and a disentated asabount, faint scar on his left temple. His name was Idris, a fact Amara would soon learn. He was not brandishing a knife or a firearm. The sole object in his hand was a smartphone. His gaze held an urgent coolness, entirely devoid of lust or needless cruelty. Wordlessly, he held the phone's screen close to her face and initiated playback on a voice recording. The volume was turned to its maximum. The voice that spilled from the speaker felt so near, as if its owner was in the room with them. It was a voice Amara recognized instantly. It was Kyrie, the man who only hours ago had vowed his eternal love at the altar. On the recording, Kyrie was heard laughing in a manner she'd never known, a scornful, almost malevolent cackle. And then he began to speak. He declared he was finally married, adding he nearly got sick from faking so much tenderness and devotion for 2 whole years, that he was tired of playing the part of the perfect man to gain that woman's confidence. The visitant that would WT's his party. Recording played on. Kyrie admitted he had feigned being responsible, prompt for church, and deeply engaged in the sermons solely to maintain appearances for her and the community. A second voice cut in, feminine, sweet-toned, and strangely familiar. It was Sienna, the young woman he always presented as his distant cousin, an orphan he was allegedly assisting. Out. In the audio, her tone was teasing and suggestive, a stark contrast to the gentle humility she always displayed to Amara. Sienna urged him to be patient, reminding him it was all for their shared future. Then Kyrie's voice, cold and calculating, laid out his actual scheme. Now that Amara was his wife, her fortune would finally be within his grasp. As well, in 3 months, his plan was to mentally shatter her. He would use the fact that her own mother, Eleanor, had succumbed to severe depression to persuade everyone that Amara had inherited the very same affliction. Amara listened, frozen in place, as Kyrie detailed his plan to slip substances into her drinks, inducing hallucinations, panic attacks, and unpredictable behavior. His ultimate goal, to have her declared unfit to manage the company and to seize power of attorney over all of it, bleed the Vance accounts dry, divorce her, and commit her to a psychiatric institution. Then, he declared he would escape with Sienna to enjoy a lavish life in Europe. Amara's reality shattered in a moment. Her legs gave way, and she crumbled down amid the jumble of shoes at the closet's base. Her face turned ashen, as pale as a death shroud. Each word from the recording was a dagger straight to her heart. Kyrie, her own husband, the one man she trusted above all, was a complete monster. Sienna, whom she had treated like a sister, was his lover and his accomplice. Nothing had been a mere coincidence. This was an elaborate scheme designed to ruin her. Idris cut the recording just as the couple's harsh laughter erupted once more. He slipped the phone into his pocket and gazed down at Amara, who wept in complete silence, shuddering with anguish. He crouched down to meet her gaze, not touching her, maintaining a respectful distance, but with a firm look. Just then, footsteps echoed in the corridor, followed by a joyful hum. It was the unmistakable sound of Kyrie's real voice. Making his way back from reception, the handle on the main door turned, but the chain lock stopped it from opening wide. "Honey, why is this door locked from the inside? Are you changing?" Kyrie inquired from outside with that sweet tone that once made Amara's heart leap, but now felt like a viper's hiss. Idris met her gaze and whispered urgently, his lips hardly moving. "You have a choice to make. Option 1. Scream, create a scene, and confront him this instant. But with no hard proof and your emotions a wreck, he will simply turn this all on you. He will claim the recording is a fabrication, that you're just hysterical from all the wedding stress. His scheme to paint you as unstable begins tonight, and it will be a slow, painful destruction." He paused as Kyrie's voice called out again, slightly louder this time, though still patient. "Second option, you say nothing, dry your eyes, walk out of this closet, and act like nothing is wrong. You play along with his deception, but on our terms. Tonight you'll become the perfect bride he is expecting to find. You allow him to think he has already won this game, while I help you orchestrate your countermove. We will dismantle him with the same cruelty that he intended for you. Make your choice, Amara. Scream now and lose, or be silent and win." She stared at him, her eyes red-rimmed, speechless. Through her anguish, a small spark of fury started to catch fire. She recalled her parents, the company that was built upon her father's sacrifice, and the pride of the Vance name. She would not let a schemer like Kyrie take it all. She drew a deep breath, wiped away the tears with the back of her hand, and then nodded. She made the choice to fight. Amara summoned her resolve. Idris gestured to the bathroom, silently telling her to wash her face and conceal her tears. Quietly, he moved toward the balcony entrance, concealed by the thick curtains. Just before he vanished from sight, he gave her a final, meaningful glance. "Stay strong," his gaze conveyed. Amara entered the bathroom, turning the water on full to mask any sounds, and repeatedly splashed her face with ice-cold water. The sudden shock helped her to regain a measure of her composure. She stared into the mirror at a delicate young woman with reddened eyes. She took makeup from her bag, carefully blending away all traces of her tears, and took a deep breath. "I can do this for Mama, for Daddy. I will be a perfect actress tonight," she vowed. After the sound of the water ceased, she returned to the bedroom, walked across the floor, and moved toward the stock door. With a hand that quivered uncontrollably, she slid the chain lock and opened it. Kyrie was waiting there, beaming from ear to ear, still looking flawless in his tuxedo. He remained the very picture of the ideal son-in-law to the world. "Sorry, my love. I was in the restroom. I didn't hear you knock," she uttered, feigning an exhausted tone instead of one shattered by sobs. Kyrie stepped inside, shut the door, and embraced her with great enthusiasm. "Ah, that explains it. I figured you dozed off on me, darling. And don't lock me out again, okay? We are husband and wife now," he quipped with a laugh. The aroma of his costly cologne, once so intoxicating, now made her feel utterly nauseous. The same embrace where she once felt secure now choked her like a cold iron restraint. Amara allowed him to wrap his arms about her, but her own remained lifeless. She could not return the hug. Kyrie, completely self-absorbed, was oblivious to her rigidity. "Are you shivering? Feeling cold?" he inquired, stroking her cheek with his hand. His touch made her skin crawl with disgust. "The air conditioning is just turned up high, that's all," she fibbed, forcing a faint smile. She retreated a step, using the excuse she needed water. Kyrie nodded in understanding. "Sit yourself down on the sofa for a moment. I need to get changed. I can't stand this suit any longer. I've been overheating all day," he declared, moving toward the very closet his wife had hidden in moments ago. Amara's heart began to pound once more, watching him swing the doors open, but not a single sign of Idris remained. Her eyes darted to the balcony. The drapes shifted faintly near. An opening in the glass door, proof Idris had slipped out that way. As Kyrie removed his jacket with his back, facing away, Amara sat on the sofa, affecting indifference. Her gaze drifted unwillingly to the nightstand. There, screen up, Kyrie's mobile phone illuminated. A new message had just arrived. She glanced at Kyrie. He was still turned away, searching for a more casual shirt. Amara tilted forward slightly to see the notification. It felt as if time froze on the display. The sender was clearly labeled Sienna, cousin, yet the message itself was far from familial. All the best with your special performance tonight, my love. Take your vitamins for extra stamina. You have quite a task ahead. Love you. The words my love, task, and the heart icon struck her like a physical blow. This was the undeniable proof that cemented everything she heard on the recording. All room for doubt had vanished. Her marriage was a complete sham. Kyrie's tears, when he proposed before her mother's grave, pure theater. Amara clutched the material of her gown so tightly that her knuckles went white. She felt fury simmering inside her, but then recalled Idris's advice: remain silent and conquer. When Kyrie faced her again, now pulling on a t-shirt, he noticed her by the phone and frowned. Is everything all right, darling? Did someone call? He questioned, striding over to retrieve the device. She glanced up, feigning her most innocent look. No, the screen just lit up. For a moment, I assumed it was the family group chat, she answered with composure. Kyrie inspected the screen. Amara watched his lips form a faint, clandestine smirk while reading Sienna's text, before he locked the screen and thrust the phone into his pocket. Yeah, you know my cousins. They've been flooding my phone with congratulations all day long, he fabricated, as he sat beside her, draping an arm over her shoulders. The night stretched on endlessly. Amara was forced to endure Kyrie's sweet nothings about their honeymoon, his grand plans for the future, his pledges of unconditional love. Each "I love you" rang hollow and vile. She made her excuses, claiming her cycle had begun and that she was utterly drained from the long day, sidestepping the intimacy he craved. Kyrie appeared slightly disappointed but continued playing the part of the devoted husband. Do not worry, my queen. We have an entire lifetime ahead of us. You should get some rest, he whispered, kissing her forehead. When he finally fell asleep, snoring softly, Amara lay wide awake, staring blankly at the ceiling, her eyes wide open. She rolled over, turning her back to Kyrie as silent tears began to stream down her face. In the darkness, she felt around between the sofa cushions. Before he left, she'd noticed Idris slip something there. Her fingers grazed a small, stiff card. It was a stark black business card with silver lettering. Idris Bishop, private investigator. And a phone number. No logo, no firm name. At daybreak, as Kyrie hummed in the shower, Amara quietly locked herself inside the walk-in closet, pulled out the card, and examined it. The eyes staring back from the mirror were no longer those of a coddled young woman. They now held a new, unyielding hardness. The innocent girl had perished the night before, slain by betrayal. In her place stood a woman prepared for battle. With hands that trembled but were resolute, she picked up her own Tange phone, entered the number from the card, and sent a text. It's Amara. Show me how to ruin them. I need them to suffer more than I ever imagined possible. She pressed send, then erased the entire conversation. She emerged from the closet with her head held high. The war was only just beginning. A week had passed since the night that twisted her honeymoon into a living hell. To the world, Amara and Kyrie's marriage appeared to be a fairy tale. Flawless photos flooded social media, loving gestures, romantic brunches. Within the walls of the Buckhead family mansion, however, a meticulously crafted farce was underway. Amara had transformed into a masterful actress, Each morning, she offered a sweet smile to the man she secretly longed to poison. She let Kyrie caress her, let him call her my queen, all while a deep repulsion festered inside, fueling her resolve. Determination. That morning, though the sun bathed the dining room in golden light, the atmosphere felt glacial to her. Kyrie was enthusiastically devouring the breakfast the staff had prepared. Amara, facing a bowl of oatmeal, merely pushed her spoon through it. Kyrie set down his utensils and regarded her with feigned concern. "What is it, my love? You have hardly eaten for days. Are you still worried about the company?" he asked, his hand reaching across to take hers. A wave of nausea hit her at his touch, but she forced herself to play her part. "Yes, I've had a constant headache. I am drained from all the paperwork for Daddy's estate. It is simply too much for me to handle," she lamented in a feeble voice. A line she had carefully rehearsed with Idris. Kyrie's smile held a satisfaction so subtle it was nearly invisible, but Amara saw it. "You see, I told you not to put so much pressure on yourself. Your well-being comes first, darling. Don't you remember how a mother began to feel? The migraines, the constant anxiety. I do not want you to end up like her," he said, summoning the memory of the woman Amara cherished most to advance his scheme. She had to suppress the fury that rose at hearing her mother, Eleanor's name wielded as a manipulative weapon. She bowed her head, nodding faintly. "I know. I am terrified of becoming like her." "Mama," she whispered, reinforcing the very narrative Kiri wanted to believe. Mid-morning, she asked for his permission to go to a salon for some relaxation. Kyrie didn't just allow it, he celebrated it, seeing it as a sign she was finally distracting herself with trivial matters. But Amara had a different kind of meeting. She hailed a ride, then switched cars. Mid-journey, to guarantee she wasn't being tailed, arriving at a quiet, inconspicuous coffee house on Atlanta's edge. At the most shadowed table in the back, Idris sat waiting, disguised in a cap and plaid shirt. No affectionate greetings were exchanged. She had hardly settled when he slid a bulky manila envelope across the table's center. "This is the result of that extra investigation you requested," he stated, his voice low and controlled. "I looked back into the so-called car accident that killed your father 1 year ago. The police ruled it brake failure, but my instincts told me otherwise." With trembling hands, Amara stared at the envelope, slowly unsealing it to reveal several photographs of her father's wrecked luxury car, followed by a stack of bank statements. Idris pointed to specific lines. "These show transfers made just 2 days prior to the crash from one of Kyrie's personal accounts to a man named Rahim, who is an ex-mechanic with a criminal record. See the amount, $50,000. This was just as Kyrie had an online gambling debt nearing $300,000 that was due. Amara gasped in horror, the dates and the sums sickening her. "Are you suggesting Kyrie arranged to have my father's brakes sabotaged?" she whispered, her voice almost gone. Idris nodded grimly. "Your father had refused to give him the money for his gambling debts. Kyrie grew desperate. His collectors were closing in, removing your father from the equation, and marrying you quickly was his ideal path to seize the family fortune and gain control of the company. He isn't just an adulterer and a con artist, Amara. He is a murderer." Idris said it plainly. Tears began to flow again, now laced with a rage so fierce it made her chest ache. The man she shared a bed with nightly had orchestrated the murder of his own father-in-law. Her fist tightened, nails digging deep into her palm. "I am going to end him," she hissed, venom in her voice. "I will kill him with my own 2 hands." "No," Idris interrupted. At once, his gaze firm. "If you do that, you'll be imprisoned. Sienna will play the grieving widow and keep everything that you forfeit. A fate far worse than a swift ending exists for him. Make him lose his freedom, his reputation, his wealth, and all his power. Let him waste away in a cell for his entire life. That is true justice. Amara suddenly wiped her eyes, inhaling deeply as the word resonated within her. You are right. Death would be too merciful. For him. He must endure a living hell. Later that evening, upon returning home, another challenge awaited. She discovered Kyrie in the living room, seated on her late mother's cherished sofa, with Sienna beside him, seeing that woman in her home, smiling with feigned modesty in the very spot her mother always read, made her sick. Kyrie rose with an overly rendered, cheerful expression. Darling, you are home. Look, you recall Sienna, my distant cousin from the wedding. Well, she was evicted from her apartment over a supposed lease issue. She's all alone in this city. I offered for her to stay here a few days. You know, this house is enormous. We have more than enough space, he explained, as if performing some great act of charity. Sienna? She rose with a pleading look. I truly hate to impose, Amara. I never wanted to be a burden, but Kyrie is the only family I have in this place. I had nowhere else to turn, she said, her voice a sweet, deceptive melody. Amara studied her, young and pretty, her clothes a touch too tight, feigning a demure modesty. Behind that innocent facade, Amara could already discern the viper within. She manufactured a warm smile. Oh, Sienna, please don't be silly. You are family. Consider this your home. It will be nice having company while Kyrie is at work. We'll have so much to talk about, she replied, her tone flawlessly kind. Kyrie and Sienna shared a fleeting glance, relieved by what they perceived as her naive compliance. They never suspected that Amara considered this a blessing. Keeping her adversary under the same roof would simplify monitoring her every move. That very evening, as Kyrie and Sienna conversed on the terrace, Amara crept into the study and the main living area. She retrieved several minuscule button-like cameras from Idris from her purse, placing them in strategic locations, concealed behind a painting in the living room, nestled among books in the study, and beside a kitchen cabinet, all linked to a disposable phone. She concealed in her room before bed. Finally alone, she opened the camera application. The kitchen feed materialized, crisp and clear on her screen. There he was, Kyrie, making tea, the same herbal blend she always drank before sleeping. Amara watched him glance around, furtively remove a small packet from his pocket, and empty a white powder into her designated cup, stirring until the substance dissolved completely. His expression, devoid of affection, was a mask of cold concentration. Amara recorded the clip and saved the file. This was her first concrete proof of his treachery. She stared at the screen with a newfound coldness. Mix your potions, Kyrie, but not a single drop will pass my lips, she vowed internally. The unspoken war within that mansion had just been formally declared. The following morning, Kyrie strode into the detector bedroom carrying a tray with a steaming cup and toast. He set it all down with a theatrical gentleness on her nightstand. Good morning, my lovely wife, he cooed, perching on the bed and caressing her arm. I've prepared a special tea for you. It is a recipe from a doctor friend of mine. It's said to soothe the nerves and ward off melancholy and stress. I really don't want you to end up like your mother, he added, twisting the memory of Eleanor into a weapon once more. Amara fought the impulse to hurl the scalding liquid at his face. She pushed herself up slowly, faking weariness. Thank you. You are always so thoughtful, she replied, taking the cup into her hands. Its warmth bled through the porcelain, yet her heart remained ice-cold. She breathed in the scent. Underneath the jasmine's perfume, she detected a subtle chemical note that almost anyone else would have completely missed. Noticed. Kyrie observed her without blinking, waiting for her to swallow the mixture. She understood she could not possibly refuse it, as doing so would raise his suspicions. She had to feign it. She touched the rim to her lips and simulated taking a small sip. Then she began to cough. as if she'd been scalded by the heat. "Ouch, it's scorching hot," she complained, pulling it away. "Be careful, my dear," he urged, his impatience showing through a thin veil of concern. Just then, his phone buzzed on the dresser. Kyrie glanced toward the sound instinctively. In that fleeting moment of distraction, Amara angled the cup over a large potted sansevieria, a snake plant, beside the bed, and emptied nearly all of its contents onto the soil and decorative pebbles. The fluid, it vanished, leaving almost no sign. By the time Kyrie glanced over, she was already lifting the cup to her lips and making a deliberate final swallow. She then placed it on the tray, empty but for a trace of dregs. "This has a strange, slightly bitter taste," she remarked, almost daring a reaction. Kyrie grinned, relieved by the sight of the empty cup. "That's perfectly normal. The best herbs are often bitter. You'll adjust. Now, go shower. You have that meeting with the shareholders today. You must appear flawless," Kyrie urged. He was banking on the substance taking effect during that very meeting, making Amara look disoriented before the investors. She resolved to give him the performance he anticipated, but one she would orchestrate. From then on, she carefully began to build the image of a woman unraveling at the seams. Before Sienna, she feigned misplacing items and even called her by the housekeeper's name, offering an apology with a bewildered expression. 3 days later at dinner, she deliberately swept her plate onto the floor, shrieking in terror, claiming she saw a dark figure in the corner of the room. The shattered china, the scream, her tears, it all appeared to be a breakdown. Kyrie and Sienna played their parts flawlessly, feigning deep concern. They comforted her and led her to bed, but the second her back was turned, they exchanged smug glances. "The substance is taking effect quicker than expected," Kyrie murmured to Sienna, certain they were unheard. Alongside this charade, Amara pressed forward with her true objective. Idris had supplied new intelligence. Sienna maintained a secret apartment under an assumed name, where a safe held crucial documents, counterfeit passports, true identities, and the certificate for a religious union between herself and Kyrie, consecrated 2 years prior. This was proof that her marriage to Amara was a complete deception from the beginning. That Friday, Sienna declared she'd be at the salon all day. Kyrie had a golf match scheduled with business partners. In reality, it was a ruse set by Idris to keep him busy. Amara feigned a migraine and announced she was staying in. The moment Sienna's car cleared the gate, she changed with incredible speed. Sleek black attire, a cap, and a face mask. She slipped out the back entrance to a waiting taxi Idris had arranged. The journey to the Black to Dija apartment complex seemed to stretch on forever. Her first definite crime, breaking into a home. She simply did not care. In the pursuit of justice, she would cross any line. With a duplicate key fob provided by Idris, she gained access to the building effortlessly. Sienna's flat on the 15th floor was silent and dusty. She disengaged the lock with extreme stealth, activated a small torch, and headed directly for the bedroom, adhering to the exact directions Idris had supplied. Concealed behind a wardrobe, amidst old garments, she located the metal safe. She produced a compact electronic gadget, a specialized code breaker, setting it over the keypad. The digits on the small screen immediately began to flash, cycling combinations. 1 minute, then 2. Cold sweat trickled down her forehead. Come on," she breathed to herself. At last, a green light illuminated, and the heavy door clicked unlocked. Within lay piles of cash, jewels, and, most crucially, a transparent folder filled with papers. Amara opened it, passports with Kyrie's face, but bearing the name Trayvon, a forged ID, and a certificate of religious marriage for Kyrie and Sienna, dated 2 years prior, well before. He was kneeling before Amara. The evidence was pure dynamite. It confirmed the wedding was a complete fraud. She photographed every document with her phone, stashing the originals in her backpack. Just as she was preparing to escape, she heard the chime of the front door unlocking. A keycard had just been used. Her blood ran cold. It was Sienna. Amara heard her swearing into her phone, griping that the salon was shut for remodeling, and telling Kyrie that she was swinging by her old apartment to pick up some clothes. The footsteps were nearing the bedroom. There was no escape through the window. It was sealed shut, and the drop was fatal. Her only option was the closet. Amara shut the safe, arranged everything to look untouched, and slipped into the closet's other section, concealing herself behind a stack of coats. She pulled the doors nearly shut, leaving just a sliver of a gap. Terror consumed her. It was a chilling echo of her wedding night. But this time, if Sienna discovered her, she would likely try to end her life. Sienna strode into the room, still on her phone. "Yes, Kyrie, I'm in the bedroom now. I'm getting my red leather jacket. I'm pretty sure I left it here," she said. Amara didn't dare to breathe. She saw her shadow moving past the crack. She drew closer to the closet. "Now, where did I put that jacket?" she mumbled, her hand reaching for the doorknob. Amara squeezed her eyes shut, her hand clutching the pepper spray in her pocket. She was prepared to fight. The door began to open. At that instant, a piercing siren echoed throughout the whole building. The fire alarm began to scream at maximum volume, followed by a recorded voice urging evacuation by the emergency stairs due to smoke on the 15th floor. There was no actual smoke. It was Idris, who had hacked the building's security network from afar. Sienna flinched, releasing the closet handle and recoiled, covering her ears. "You've got to be kidding me," she moaned, snatching her purse and rushing out, completely forgetting about the jacket. Amara heard the front door slam shut and the commotion of neighbors in the hall. She waited for a few moments, then emerged from the closet, trembling uncontrollably. Not wasting a second, she seized her backpack, full of documents, and hurried down the fire escape, melting into the crowd of panicked residents. Nobody was paying any mind to a masked woman amid the pandemonium. As she stepped onto the street from a side exit, she spotted a waiting black sedan, its engine humming. She slid inside and threw the backpack onto the seat. Idris opened it and rapidly scanned the contents, smiling with deep satisfaction. Counterfeit passports, a hidden marriage, and a true identity. "This is an absolute bombshell. We can imprison them at any time, but following your plan, we will first ensure they are financially ruined," he stated. Amara agreed, a fiery resolve in her gaze. She wanted more than just prison. She wanted to shatter their greed and arrogance, to take away everything for which they had betrayed and taken lives. Over the next few days, the financial retaliation commenced. As the true heiress, she could access accounts that Kyrie was completely unaware of. With guidance from her father's loyal former financial advisor, Amara started to quietly transfer liquid funds, including cash, deposits, and bonds, using small, staggered transfers to secure offshore accounts not traceable back to her, avoiding any alarms under Kyrie's control. To ensnare Kyrie, they used his own greed against him. Amara knew he was desperate to gather funds for his gambling losses and to sustain his opulent lifestyle with Sienna. Idris orchestrated, through middlemen, a fake real estate investment scheme involving non-existent land in a protected zone. They drafted elegant brochures and presentations, pledging returns of nearly triple in just 6 months. Kyrie fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. He arrived home one night, ecstatic, holding a folder. "Babe, look at this. We have a golden opportunity, a high-end project with massive returns. All I need is your signature as president to release the initial investment from company funds. It's a fantastic opportunity to expand your father's legacy," he told her. Amara, who was brushing her hair before the mirror with a distant look, pretended to be hesitant. She accepted the pen he handed her. "Are you certain it's this good?" she questioned, trembling just enough to appear vulnerable. "Absolutely. I already vetted everything. You do trust me, don't you?" he pressed urgently. She signed her name, subtly altering the pen stroke from her normal signature, allowing a future claim of coercion or forgery. Kyrie missed the detail, entirely preoccupied. With the millions of dollars he pictured flowing into his bank account, he was oblivious that the funds would soon disappear into the possession of Idris's crew, creating a deficit that would implicate him as the one responsible. The next step was to shatter the partnership between Kyrie and Sienna. Amara understood a relationship founded on malevolence couldn't withstand mistrust. She started planting seeds of doubt meticulously. One afternoon, while Sienna was painting her nails in the lounge, Amara sat beside her with a preoccupied air. She appeared to be lost deep in her own thoughts. "See," she murmured. "Yes, Amara," Sienna answered, barely glancing up. "Last night, Kyrie was talking again in his sleep. It's been happening a lot recently. Yesterday was particularly odd. He muttered words like, 'When we have the money, I'll have to take care of Sienna. She knows too much. She's a risk. Better to marry Kesha. She will be easier to manage.' Do you know a Kesha?" she asked, affecting innocence. The nail polish nearly slipped from Sienna's fingers. Kesha was the name of Kyrie's ex-girlfriend, a long-standing source of irritation for her. Sienna forced a laugh. "Oh, you must have misheard. Kyrie sleeps like a rock. It was probably just a strange dream you had," she shot back. Amara shook her head softly. "I heard him perfectly clear. But regardless, maybe it was nothing. My mind sometimes plays tricks on me," she said, getting up. She left Sienna there, biting her lip, her mind racing. The seed of paranoia was already planted. That very night, the secret cameras filmed a loud fight inside the guest room where Sienna was staying. She charged Kyrie with planning to leave her, seeing another woman, and plotting to remove her once he secured the funds. Kyrie, clueless about the root of her suspicion, became furious and attacked her for being paranoid. The fight ended with the slam of a door. From her own bed, Amara viewed the scene on her phone with a chilling smile. Seeing her adversaries turn on each other was an added benefit. Her strategy of feigning madness hit a critical juncture when Kyrie decided to hasten his plan. Overburdened by financial pressure, his clashes with Sienna, and the hole in the accounts, he could no longer wait 3 months. He had to get legal guardianship over Amara without delay. One morning, he instigated a confrontation. He deliberately shattered a crystal vase cherished by Amara's mother, then accused her of hurling it in a blind rage. On cue, she threw herself down, simulating a complete nervous collapse, sobbing and screaming for her mother as she retreated into a corner. The household staff watched, aghast at the spectacle. Kyrie took this opportunity to telephone his lawyer and a compromised psychiatrist he'd already bribed, Dr. Hightower. "Doctor, my wife's condition has worsened. She is having these violent outbursts. She's a menace to herself and everyone. I must have you come today for an evaluation and to file a report, to petition for legal guardianship." He groaned into the receiver, feigning despair. He was unaware, however, that Idris had been monitoring his calls for weeks. The moment the psychiatrist's name was mentioned, he sprang into action. Dr. Hightower's vehicle was halted en route to the estate by a traffic snarl, the result of a small, staged accident. Taking his place, another specialist arrived, Dr. Caldwell, a reputable and ethical psychiatrist from the city hospital, who was accompanied 582I by 2 nurses from a recognized mental health institution. They rang the bell with the utmost professionalism. Kyrie, seeing an unfamiliar doctor, was visibly unsettled. "Who are you? I was expecting Dr. Hightower," he demanded suspiciously. Dr. Hightower had a minor incident. He urgently asked that I take his place. Dr. Caldwell clarified, presenting his credentials. I am aware this is a critical evaluation. It is not wise to postpone it. Kyrie paused for a moment. To cancel everything now would mean squandering all the momentum he'd carefully built. Besides, he felt certain the drugs Amara ingested had rendered her a complete mental mess. Before any observer, certain of his concoction's effect, he permitted them entry. The examination occurred in the master bedroom. Amara was perched on the bed's edge, her hair disheveled and her gaze apparently vacant. Kyrie, Sienna, and the lawyer observed from the sidelines as official witnesses. Dr. Caldwell sat before her, holding a recorder, and began with simple questions. Her name, the date, her location, recent events. Kyrie stifled a smirk, anticipating Amara would ramble nonsensically about shadows and imaginary voices. To his shock, she ceased her rocking, lifted her head, and met his gaze with perfect clarity. She pushed a strand of hair behind her ear, responding in a steady tone. Yes, doctor, I hear you clearly. I know who I am, and I know where I am. And I also know the reason my husband is so nervous today, she added, glancing pointedly at Kyrie. The doctor continued. With tests of cognitive memory and calculation, Amara replied to each one precisely, even the complicated mathematical problems, and provided a consistent narrative of the past several days without any contradictions. Kyrie began to perspire. How could she be this lucid after supposedly ingesting large doses of psychotropic medication? Sienna, standing next to him, tightened her fists. Following a full hour of assessment, Dr. Caldwell shut his folder. Mr. Sterling, he began, addressing the husband, based upon my complete assessment, your wife is in a perfectly sound mental state. She exhibits zero symptoms of major depression, psychosis, or any delirium. Her judgment and her memory are unimpaired. I shall be issuing a report that declares her fully competent to handle her own affairs. I find no medical grounds for a guardianship petition. He finished. That is impossible. She's been taking medication, Kyrie blurted out. Before he could stop himself. Medicating her with what, precisely? The doctor inquired, his brow furrowed. With calming herbal teas? Kyrie corrected awkwardly. Once the doctor and attorney departed, leaving the couple in solitude. For a brief moment, Kyrie was incandescent with fury. Amara rose deliberately, straightened her blouse, and moved toward him with feline grace. Leaning close to his ear, she spoke in an icy whisper. Your tea had a slight bitterness, Kyrie. That is why, from the very first day, I poured it into the dirt of that corner snake plant and then refilled my cup with ordinary tea. The sole thing your pills have poisoned is the plant, not me, she whispered. Kyrie's expression completely crumbled. He stared as if he had just seen a phantom. Amara's smile was no longer gentle, it was deadly. I have been performing all this time, and you were the simplest audience to deceive. Savor the start of your downfall, she added, as she turned away. As she was exiting, police cars began nearing the main entrance. Idris had already alerted the authorities about the fabricated real estate fraud. The trap Kyrie set to make her appear mad was now tightening around him. Everything culminated at the Vance Legacy Group Anniversary Gala, which was held inside the opulent ballroom of a luxurious downtown hotel. Thousands of crystal fixtures lit a room adorned with pristine white roses and sapphire ribbons. The space was filled with politicians, elite executives, reporters, and key investors. At the doorway, Amara, dressed in a midnight blue gown with a matching satin veil, greeted her guests with a mysterious smile. Next to her stood Kyrie in a new black tuxedo, his face gleaming for the cameras, while his back was drenched in cold perspiration. Since Dr. Caldwell's visit, he'd been treading on glass. He was unsure of what Amara knew, or when she might finally erupt. She had not evicted him from the house or reported him right away. Instead, she compelled him to continue playing his role as CEO, to be present that evening simply to maintain appearances. Across the room, Sienna nervously drank. In a scarlet dress far too bold for the occasion, she felt eyes on her from every direction, whispers concerning her presence at the mansion were already making rounds. The event opened with typical speeches and a corporate video presentation. Afterward, Amara ascended the stage. The chatter subsided. She grasped the microphone and began to speak with a steady voice. "Good evening. I thank you all for joining us on this momentous day for the company my father built upon a foundation of integrity and diligence. Tonight is not just for celebrating an anniversary, it is also a night for revealing the truth. When termites infest a home, they are not seen at first, but slowly they will erode the foundations. This evening, I want you to meet the most ambitious individual this corporation has ever known, a person who could elevate it or destroy it. My husband, Kyrie," she declared. The audience offered courteous applause. Kyrie, thinking this was a public acknowledgement, ascended to the platform with a strained smile. He took the microphone and launched into a speech on future vision, world markets, and his father-in-law's great legacy. He was not able to finish his sentence. Abruptly, the lights extinguished, and the ballroom was plunged into darkness, except for the single beam from the massive projector on the screen behind them. No graphs or corporate videos appeared, but instead a recording of their home's living room, filmed by one of the secret cameras. Kyrie and Sienna was shown on the sofa with a pricey bottle of wine, both roaring with laughter as Kyrie's voice boomed from the speakers. He boasted about how simple it was to deceive Amara, calling her every bit as feeble as her mother, claiming a mere increase in her medication would land her in a psychiatric facility. Sienna's voice then asked what their plan was if she got suspicious, with Kyrie replying they could always stage another accident. The audience was utterly stunned. Shocked gasps erupted from every corner. Reporters immediately fixated on the screen, then on Kyrie's face, lit up erratically by the flickering video. But the exposé wasn't over. The screen shifted to documents, displaying the counterfeit passports bearing the name Trayvon, his real identity, with Kyrie's picture. Bank statements revealed the diversion of company funds and the religious marriage certificate with Sienna. It was a complete public dissection of his crimes. Kyrie staggered backward, the microphone slipping from his hand. He glanced at Amara, standing by the stage completely smileless, with the chilling face of a hangman. "This is all a setup, deep fakes," he shrieked, now unamplified, his high, desperate voice swallowed by outraged murmurs. He attempted to escape, shoving through photographers and cameramen and lunging himself toward a side exit. But blocking the emergency door stood Idris, waiting for him while leaning calmly on the wall. "Leaving so soon, Trayvon? The real party is just beginning," he taunted. Kyrie, utterly unhinged, threw a punch. Idris sidestepped the attack effortlessly, neutralized his arm, and threw him hard against the wall. Within moments, several policemen, already positioned inside the hotel, descended upon him, restraining and cuffing him. Across the expansive room, Sienna attempted a desperate escape. Seeing Kyrie cornered, she shrieked that he had coerced her, that she was a victim, and that she would even testify against him for Marcus Vance's murder. She betrayed him without hesitation, but it was far too late. The proof overwhelmingly demonstrated her involvement. Undercover officers and female agents quickly encircled her and escorted her from the room as she kicked, wept, and cursed. The anniversary celebration had become a national scandal. Amara stayed on stage, observing the two betrayers being hauled toward the exit amid blinding flashes and cameras. She felt no ecstatic joy, only a profound feeling of relief. Yet, she knew that cornered predators still remained. a threat. 2 days on, the media remained saturated with news of the case. The justice system, however, had its flaws. Despite a mountain of evidence for his fraud, the charge for her father's murder demanded a much slower forensic investigation. A shrewd lawyer, funded by Kyrie's final secret reserves, secured for him a measure of high security. House arrest, by citing heart issues and feigning cooperation. Sienna was not afforded the same fortune. She remained in a standard cell and, enraged by Kyrie's betrayal, began confessing to detectives, offering up more details that only tightened the noose around her lover's neck. Kyrie, though free for now, was financially destroyed. His accounts were frozen. The luxury cars in his apartment were seized. His wealthy friends vanished. He was staying in a cheap motel on the outskirts, hiding from the press and collectors of his old gambling debts. He saw himself as the victim of a grave injustice. Failing to recognize his life was a direct consequence of his own actions. One fateful night, amidst the torrential rain, in a damp room, he drank cheap liquor and glared at an illicit pistol he had bought with his final bills. He knew escaping the country was impossible. He was being watched, and he refused to rot behind bars. If he went down, he was determined to drag Amara with him. "I will not let you win, Amara. Never," he snarled, tucking the weapon inside his jacket before moving into the downpour. At 2 a.m., the Vance mansion was submerged in silence, with few exterior lights active. After the scandal, security was heightened, yet no one knew the blind spots better than the man who had the old system installed. Kyrie himself scaled a wall section covered by ivy around the back, evading the vision field of several cameras, and pried open a kitchen window with a crowbar, then entered. The crack of thunder and the sound of rain concealed the shattering glass. The aroma of lavender air freshener turned his stomach. It was a reminder of the home that was no longer his. He crept stealthily towards the stairs. His destination was as sharp as his rage, Amara's master bedroom. But as he cut through the living room, the lights flashed on. Seated in an armchair, awaiting him, was Idris. He was in normal clothes, with no indication of sleep. He appeared to have been anticipating him. "I knew the rat would find his way back to his sewer," he stated calmly, his hand near his waist where his service pistol was hidden. "Move! This is between my wife and me," Kyrie bellowed, pulling out the gun with trembling hands. Idris stood up slowly, raising a hand to de-escalate. "It's all over, Kyrie. Police are on their way. Sienna gave up your location. Just turn yourself in and stop making this worse. To hell with you!" Kyrie screamed as he pulled the trigger. The shot echoed through the entire house. Idris dived to the floor, using the armchair for cover. The bullet grazed his left arm, drawing blood instantly. Amara, upstairs, woke with a jolt from the blast. She ran out onto the landing and saw Kyrie holding the gun in his hand, completely unhinged. "Kyrie!" she cried out. Seeing her, he forgot Idris and charged up the stairs at full speed, gasping for air, with a wild look in his eyes. "Come here. We're going to die together, Amara," he shrieked. Utterly insane. Though terrified, she kept her wits about her. She didn't run to lock herself away, knowing a wood door wouldn't last. Instead, she fled to the bedroom balcony, an open space overlooking the front garden. Wind and rain struck her face as she stepped outside. She moved back until the railing pressed against her spine. Below her, the recomended darkness of the garden and pavement stretched far down. Kyrie emerged at the glass door, drenched, his gun on her chest. "The show's over. No more cameras, no doctors, no police. It's just you and me," he snarled, advancing slowly. "You thought you were so much smarter than me, but you are still that same weak little girl." Amara lifted her chin, staring at him. Rainwater blended with the tears she made no effort to hide. The weak woman you knew died on the night she heard your voice planning to murder me. The one who stands before you is your worst nightmare, she retorted without looking away. Kiri let out a choked laugh. Nightmare? You're nothing but Tra, he began to say, but did not finish. From behind, an injured Idris appeared and launched himself forward. The two men crashed to the balcony floor. Slick with water, the firearm skittered into a corner. They began a vicious struggle, trading blows, tumbling from one side to the other. Idris, weakened by the gushing wound in his arm, was fading fast. Kiri, utterly crazed, running on adrenaline, fought like a cornered beast, biting him and kicking at his injury. With an especially strong shove, Kyrie broke free and scrambled toward the gun, which had landed beside a planter. Idris struggled to rise, but his strength failed him. Amara, run! He managed to scream, but she remained frozen. She saw Kyrie grasping for the braidway weapon, beginning to rise with it in hand. If she ran, Idris would be his next victim. Something ignited within her. She recalled the self-defense crash course Idris had given her, the basic strikes. She remembered her father and her mother. She recalled the terrified girl in the closet and vowed she would never be that person again. As Kyrie was half risen, before he could take aim, Amara charged at him, launching a frontal kick with all her might, driving her heel into Kiri's solar plexus, then shoved his shoulder hard. Soaked, unsteady on the wet tiles, he lost his footing. He staggered back into the low balcony railing, the very one he had insisted on having with that minimalist design, and fell into the void. Amara! He shrieked with a howl as his body plummeted. A sickening, brutal thud echoed as he first impacted the roof of Idris's car, parked directly below, and then rolled, crashing onto the cobblestone ground. The gun discharged into the air before clattering to a stop far away. An eerie silence descended after the impact. Only the steady drumming of the rain filled the void. Amara stood frozen, clutching the railing, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She peered down. Kyrie's body was twisted on the cobblestones, barely stirring. He was not dead. The car had absorbed some of the impact, but one of his legs was obviously shattered. Idris pushed himself up, got to his feet next to her, and placed his good hand on her shoulder. You did well, Amara, he whispered, before collapsing again from sheer exhaustion. In the distance, the wail of sirens grew louder. The blue and red lights started to flash against the facade. The downfall of a king, brought about by the queen he had so underestimated. Moments later, the house was swarming with police and paramedics. As they tended to Idris and prepared Kyrie to be transported in handcuffs to a prison hospital, Amara made her way to the entrance. She watched her husband, that man she once adored, drenched, covered in mud and blood, crying out in pain as the officers secured his shattered leg to place him on the stretcher. Nothing remained of the confident charmer who once strode through the halls of power. Now, he was merely a broken criminal. Amara approached through the rain toward the brute edge of the stretcher. An officer moved to intervene, but her determined gaze made him step aside. Amara then raised her hand, calmly sliding the wedding ring from her finger. She felt the chilling cold of the metal one last time, before she let it fall onto Kyrie's chest. The faint clink as it struck his shirt buttons resonated in the silence. Take it, Amara said, her voice like ice. Consider it a final act of charity. You can sell it for cigarettes or instant ramen in the prison commissary, because as of today, not one single dollar of my father's fortune will ever reach your hands. Your name is now wiped from the records of this family. Kyrie gazed at her, his eyes wide. He desperately wanted to scream, to hurl insults, to curse her, but the words caught in his throat. In her eyes, he glimpsed something entirely new, utter fear, the Man who'd always thought he was in command was now confronting a woman who had endured every single thing he had inflicted. As they placed him inside the ambulance, in a different part of town, destiny was also closing in on Sienna. After gaining temporary freedom on bail, she attempted to escape the nation with a forged passport, purchasing a ticket to a land without an extradition treaty, but border systems had already flagged her face and fingerprints in red. At the automated airport security gate, alarms blared. Within mere seconds, TSA officers encircled her. She screamed, falsely claimed pregnancy, pleaded for mercy, but was ultimately left with cuffed wrists, filmed by dozens of smartphones. The footage of her arrest went viral as quickly as the news of Kyrie's demise. Back at the estate, as the ambulance carrying Kyrie and the police cars sped off with sirens wailing, the downpour started to ease. Amara stayed on the veranda, observing the lights vanish. Idris, his arm now bandaged, came to stand next to her. He spoke no words. His nearness was all the support she needed. She glanced at him. "Is the pain very bad?" she asked, a wave of guilt washing over her. He managed a weary smile. "It's nothing compared to the agony you've faced for months. My arm will mend in a few weeks' time. Your heart, however, will need more time," Amara agreed. For the first moment in what felt like forever, she took a full breath, free of the crushing weight on her chest. She inhaled the scent of damp soil, the fresh aroma following the storm. It was the fragrance of her freedom. 6 months onward, the seasons had shifted, and so too had Amara's world. Justice, though it tarried, had at last descended with full force. The trial of Kyrie and Sienna became one of the most sensationalized by the media. In the crowded courtroom, Kyrie was present in a wheelchair. His leg had not entirely healed, partially from altercations he started in jail and also from his complete neglect. He appeared gaunt, his hair streaked with premature gray. Next to him, Sienna's face was bare, looking drab and almost unrecognizable. The judge showed no mercy. Forensic analysis proved the sabotage of Marcus Vance's car brakes, the illicit money transfers, the conspiracy to poison Amara, the massive corporate fraud, and the attempted homicide by firearm. The verdict was unequivocal: a life sentence for both, with no chance of parole. Sienna exploded into shrieks, hurling insults at Kyrie, the judge, and everyone as she was dragged away. Kyrie, in contrast, could only lower his head as quiet tears streamed down onto his lap. Whether he wept from remorse or from fury was unclear, but it was irrelevant now. He had forfeited his liberty, his standing, his wealth, and his very public persona. He had an entire lifetime ahead to face what he'd done. Upon leaving the courthouse, a swarm of reporters surrounded Amara. This instance, she did not flinch or evade the cameras. She was dressed in a chic blazer, a stylish silk scarf, and she wore a composed expression. She calmly fielded several questions, clarifying that her main priority was now to guide Vance Holdings with full transparency and bolster social initiatives in her parents' memory. She was no longer a victim. She had redefined herself as a survivor and a leader. Under her direction, the company prospered, cleared the board of Kyrie's allies, recruiting competent and dependable individuals. She fortified internal systems. In the corporate world, she earned the title the Iron Lady of the Vance Empire. Resolute, yet compassionate. One afternoon after leaving work, rather than driving directly home, she went to a wooded cemetery at the edge of the city. The heavens were painted in hues of orange and violet. She strolled upon the Mehmet cobblestone way, holding 2 bouquets of white lilies. She paused in front of 2 well-kept tombs. The polished black marble monuments displayed the names of her parents. She knelt, set down the flowers, and traced her fingers lovingly across the etched names. "Mama, Daddy, it is finished," she murmured. They have paid for their actions against us. The firm is secure. And so am I. You can rest in peace now. I promise to protect all that you built. A gentle gust of wind moved the fabric of her scarf, like an unseen touch. Amara shut her eyes, allowing the moment's tranquility to surround her. They would be so very proud of you. A known voice spoke from behind. Amara turned to see Idris, dressed more formally than she was used to, in a pale blue button-down shirt and trousers, missing his usual leather jacket. The scar on his arm was hardly visible beneath the fabric. "How long have you been here?" she inquired, rising to her feet. "I just arrived. I have this," he answered, presenting a transparent plastic folder. "This is the final report on the case. Officially, you don't require the assistance of a private detective." She accepted the folder, but rather than examining the documents, she gazed at him. "So this is farewell. Our work arrangement has concluded." "No," he replied, a small smile on his face. Idris paused for a brief moment. A thing uncharacteristic for him. A connection had developed between them that surpassed their professional ties. He nervously scratched his neck. "In a technical sense, yes, but I've heard Vance Holdings needs a new chief of security they can depend on, and, by coincidence, I am considering leaving my life in the shadows. I want a more conventional job," he clarified. Amara let out a crisp, bright laugh. "What a remarkable coincidence. The role does have some very strict requirements," she jested. "The chief of security must be on call nearly 24 hours a day, and perhaps tolerate a business dinner with me on a weekend." Idris smiled broadly, a grin that made him appear more youthful and less intimidating. "I believe I meet that profile, particularly the dinner portion," he responded. They remained there in silence, observing the sunset. They did not discuss love or any future promises. Amara had no desire to give her heart away so easily again. They both understood that what they had must be constructed gradually with trust and patience, not from the immediacy of trauma, but in his gaze and the tranquility she felt beside him. One could feel their future might be bright. Later that evening, Amara went back to the Prassand estate, which at last felt like her own home. She ascended to the master suite that she had entirely redesigned. The walls were painted in pale shades, furniture repositioned, with no sign of Kyrie. She went to the new walk-in closet, opening the doors, and she stared at her business attire, all perfectly arranged. She recalled the frightened girl who had cowered in the depths of a similar closet, shaking as she heard her fate delivered through a recording. That memory appeared to be from another lifetime. She went to her vanity, unlatched a small box, and pulled out a black card that belonged to Idris. An aged business card. She observed it for a second, smiling softly before placing it back. She could not bring herself to discard it. It was a testament to how far she had plunged, but also that she possessed the strength to rise again. She shut the closet doors with a definitive click. She extinguished the lights, leaving only the nightstand lamp glowing, and settled back into bed. She tucked herself in, shut her eyes, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, she drifted to sleep without the dread of not waking again, without the terror of being poisoned or ambushed in the darkness. The gateway to her past, with all its agony and shadows, had finally been sealed. On the far side, a new chapter of her life was just dawning. If you have journeyed this far, you now know the toll Amara was forced to pay for treachery. Now, I urge you to subscribe, leave a like, and let me know in the comments what you believe you would have done in her position. By doing so, I will know you crave more grim tales like this one, and the next may be waiting for you much sooner than you could possibly imagine.